Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. My name is Zafar Iqbal, and today is Tuesday, 18th of July, 2023. It's about 3 o'clock, just gone 3 o'clock, and we are starting Strategic Leadership, Unit number 2 on the OTHM Level 7, and we'll be looking at the learning outcome number 1 today, okay? So it's the start of the unit. And today's we'll be looking at the principles, concepts, differences, and approaches to contemporary leadership. Okay, we'll be looking at in-depth understanding of the key principles and practices of leadership. We need to look at the the leadership styles, and this leadership style and practice of leadership will enhance your knowledge, skills, and attributes to effectively engage in the role and responsibilities required an effective team player, okay, and to lead a team. So this module is quite important in business planning and business strategy. All right, I hope that we'll go through it. And if you have any questions, you can ask me afterwards. All right, thank you. So let's look at the key terminology that we'll be using. Is we're going to be using leader, leadership, manager, who's a manager and who's a leader. We'll be looking at the differences between leadership and management, and we'll be looking at explaining the meaning and importance of leadership. We'll be looking at certain types of theories of leadership, and we'll compare those leadership theories. And towards the end, we're looking at the style of leaderships. And towards the end, I'm saying we'll be looking at some kind of other theories and other behavioral differences of management and leadership, and contrasting the main approaches to the study of leadership. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's have a start. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start with who's a leader, right? A leader, as we know, a leader is a person who leads other people, who leads by example, who a person who is an influencer, is a person who influences other people toward achieving a goal. Okay, a leader can be a person who leads by example. Okay, a manager, on the other hand, is a person who is responsible for a particular company and for a particular task. He or she is there to do a particular task and to complete that particular task. Okay, so to achieve a particular goal. In some cases, a manager, of course, can be in charge of the business, or it can be in charge for a unit, or it can be in charge for the whole business. For example, marketing manager, or a total restaurant, a manager for the whole restaurant or hotel, for example. All right, so a manager is basically a person who is responsible to do particular things for and manage the company. Okay, let's look at the differences between those managers and leaders. Now, managers are people who focus on things. They are focusing on doing things, getting the right things done. They organize, they direct, they plan, they control, they follow rules, managers. But whereas the leaders, they inspire, they focus on people rather than doing things themselves, but they do it right. Okay, they influence other people, motivate them, build their motivation, build their confidence. They try and shape other people, and they influence other people in the sense. So there's a vital difference between managers and leaders as such. Okay, a leader If we look further, I mean, for example, if leader and manager, so manager, again, he's or she leads a particular team in a company, looks at the particular goals and creates tasks, assigns tasks, motivates his or her team, contributes those teams, controls the resources, and reports back to the superiors, for example. Whereas the leader doesn't report to superior. He or she leads by example. He or she devolve power. They change a team to to get the right chemistry. They create shared values. They set direction. They set vision. They set long-term vision. They try and change teams with making sure that they are motivated and so on. So this is quite a clear-cut distinction between leadership and manager, or leaders and managers themselves. All right. So you may think who's a leader and what is a leader, and try and see who is a leader and what is a leader. So this is what we've looked at. So let's look at the going into your assessment criteria. The first assessment criteria is 1.1. Where it says explain the meaning and importance of leadership. Okay, we need to distinguish. We need to look at the meaning. What's the meaning of leadership, and what's the importance of that? Now, leadership, as we said earlier, is a person, or a leader is a person who leads. Who sets a clear vision, who sets a clear goal. He is or she influences other people to understand and accept what the matter is. And this person, leader, is a person who is leading by action, by doing it himself, showing it by example. Okay, so the other people follow it. It's important role. When the leader, he does it himself, of course, it motivates other employees, it motivates managers, it motivates other people, because this person influences others. So employee performances, employee motivation, employee productivity improves. Okay, when we want to know, the importance of a leader and leadership, we say that leadership is a process rather than some kind of thing. It's a process whereby an executive does guide, directs, and influences the behavior of other people towards the achievement of goals in an organization in a given situation. Okay, right. So this is very important. Leadership is a process. It's not a, as they say, leader. It doesn't come very quickly. It takes time. It takes the ability to do things. And of course, according to Keith David, leadership is the ability to persuade others to seek definite objectives over over a period of time, for example. It's a capacity to establish and direct other people and influence other people towards common objectives, towards common goals, and motivate other people. Also, the leadership theory is one of the most influential or most discussed theory of management, areas of management, and there are different approaches taken on this particular topic. There is no one side of the leadership style. There are many different types of facets of leadership. Max Weber, for example, he looks at the theory of leadership, and he implies that the leadership is related to the type of authority. So some notion of leadership are related to some type of authority, as Max said, or Max Weber says. These authorities. They can be involuntary, they can be forced, they can be given by order, or they are received by order, for example, and they can be inspiring other people, or they come from other leaders. So there is no one suggestion, but it's suggestion that the people, or that the leaders, they possess some kind of qualities that distinguish them from other people, and they have some kind of traits, they have some kind of ideas, they have some kind of suggestions, they have kind of actions and behavior that distinguishes them from other people. So let's look at the definition of leadership. Some people, like Rost, R-O-S-T, 1991, describe leadership as an influence relationship among leaders and collaborators who intend significant changes that reflect their mutual purposes. Leader, according to Senge and others, they describe leadership as the capacity of a human community to share its future, and specifically to sustain the significant process of change required to do so. So the leadership, they are saying, is a kind of a process. Okay, it's a kind of a process to influence other individuals, but the main thing is to accomplish a common goal, to achieve a common goal, right? And this is very important, and leaders do carry out this process by applying their leadership skills. Okay, so this is quite important. So let's look at the difference between leadership and management. I mean, I think we've looked at it at the beginning as well. So, just a quick go over a management and leader. If you look at the vision establishment, if they look at the process, manager is a planner, he's a developer of processes, he's a doer of things. He displays a kind of a vision and tries and displays some kind of goals, whereas the leader, he sets the vision, he sets the direction, he develops the plans, he achieves the vision, and he displays his attitude about the vision. So that's one or a couple of distinctions between there. When we look at the vision execution, for example, managers, they are in the processes, they are in the process of controlling and identifying and solving issues or solving problems, whereas the leadership, they try and motivate and energize and overcome barriers to change. So there is a distinction between these differences between management, and you should look more in detail the differences. I'm sure you can, as being managers and being high authority jobs, you can distinguish, you can apply these distinctions to yourself and see whether you are a leader or whether you are a manager, and the distinctions. So let's look at some styles of leadership. Now, leadership has different styles. Leadership, they mentioned different types of leadership. Some are authoritarian, some are paternalistic, some are democratic, some are laissez-faire leaders. So let's look at the leadership style. Authoritarian leaders are people who are, really focused on their power. They are, in effect, managers. They are people who consult very little or nothing with their subordinates. They use punishments or penalties, and they reward people if they do well. They reward their employees. They take the whole decision themselves, really, and they try not to share that kind of decision with somebody else. They communicate from the top to bottom, not the bottom upwards. Very little delegation, and likely to be very little, what you call the delegation is very minimal to subordinates because they don't trust their subordinates. Now, McGregor theory X is one approach of this type of leadership. Comparing this to the paternalistic leadership, now paternalistic is like a kind of a parent-child relationship where the leader is seen as a father figure, and but he still or she still refuses to delegate much or delegates very little. And this way, the authoritarian leadership differs from paternalistic leadership because at least in this leadership style, there is a little delegation, whereas in the authoritarian, there is no leadership, there is no delegation whatsoever, okay? But the leader decides what's in paternalistic. He or she still decides what's best for employees, and because they think that people are going to make mistakes, and therefore he keeps authority to himself. Typical, leader reason for not sharing this responsibility is, or why he has taken certain actions. So okay, and this particular leadership style links with Mayo, Elton Mayo, whereas addressing employee needs. Okay, the third type of leadership is democratic. Now, the democratic leadership is a totally different to the both talked about earlier. Where here the focus of power is shared with the group as a whole. The leader talks to people, he shares his views with the group, and employees have a greater involvement in decision making. But the ultimate decision, lies with the manager themselves, okay, or the leader. He has the final say. However, he consults with his subordinates, he's consults with the employees, he delegates the responsibility, he can, he talks to them. He is a popular person, he's popular because of his positive action, because of positive style. But this has, what you call the, has a consequences in the decision-taking process, because the decision takes a longer to make, and it slows the whole process down. Okay, but it's more effective, I would say, and because people have time to think, because people have time to respond, they have time to reflect, and they are experienced people. They take their time to look at decision and take the decision which is best interest of the organization. Democratic, okay. And the last laissez-faire leadership is the last of them. Now, laissez-faire means leave people alone, let them do what they want, which means the manager or the leader doesn't care, couldn't care less, and he has or she has very little or no input into today decision-making process. He's, very conscious, of the fact that, people are left alone, and people take they take their freedom to do what they want, what's best for the organization. He doesn't interfere in them, but he's, not a very good, leadership style, but it gives the employees, it gives manager the freedom to do what they think is best for the organization in particular circumstances. But however, the responsibility still stays with the leader, and they, the staff are ready. Okay. But the ultimate responsibility, of course, stays with the leader. However, the team also, takes the responsibility as well for their motivation and for their trust, and for so the different styles of leadership has advantages and their disadvantages. They are described. So autocratic has the advantage of being a good in decision making, quick when you need to make effective decisions, when it's when in difficult circumstances. I think this is effective, because in difficult circumstances or when something is not working, you take a quick decision by the leader. The decision is taken by the leader himself and then implemented, and that has advantage of a quick decision making. So the leader is very decisive, and but the disadvantage is there's no two-way communication. There's no it doesn't create a lot of communication whatsoever. Paternalistic, however, has the advantage of making two-way communication between the employee and the manager, or the leader and the manager. Okay, it's good for motivation, it's good for people working, and it's good for communicating. People feel they are contributing, for example, to the social and welfare needs of the organization. But the disadvantage with this is, of course, it slows the process down, as similar to democratic leadership. Okay, it takes a bit more longer to make decisions, but paternalistic style of leadership still a kind of a dictatorial, right, or autocratic style of management, because you don't consult much with others. Okay, democratic, however, has the advantage of sharing responsibility, or sharing decision-making process with the employees, making sure that the complex decisions are shared between employees, and employees are motivated, they given authority, and their motivation is uplifted by this particular giving or delegated authority, but the problem with this is employees can make errors, mistakes, problems, issues, if the workers are not experienced enough. Okay, and looking at the last laissez-faire, there are disadvantages and advantages as well. But we need to decide which leadership style is most effective. There is no, it depends on the circumstances. We can't say this is the best leadership style and that's the worst. No, there is no simple answer. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the, the environment in which you're making decisions. It depends on the type of decision, and depends on the situation. And, appropriate decisions may have to be made in difficult circumstances. But if you need to make a quick decision, if you need to make a tough decision when, for example, an organization is required to make difficult decision, or cutting or whatever, cutting budgets or difficult decision, then of course, what you can say, maybe an autocratic, leadership could be the best. However, it depends on all circumstances. Okay, so therefore, I wouldn't really go for one type of leadership in comparison with the other one. There are many theories relating to work relationship and their, their interaction. So let's look at some kind of theories, leadership theories, to enhance our knowledge. Now, these theories are different theories. They review some kind of transformation or transformative theories of learning. Then there are structured learning. Then there is learning outcomes for leadership development, which develop or involve different types of knowledge, affective and psychometric or psychomotor development of skills, and so on. So we need to look at the different leadership theories. Okay, one theory how one theory is called the great man theory, for example, where it says, the leaders are born rather than made, i.e., they have the leaders are naturally born, they have natural instinct, they have a natural characteristics, they have a, people have some kind of behavior that lead into the leadership and so on. As theories developed over the years, so as theories have developed, or studies have been evolving over the years, then of course the perception of a leader also have changed over the years. Okay, so some general theories have leadership have come up over the years through a lot of studies and so on. Some are called behaviorist theories, cognitive theories, constructivist theories, social situation or transformative studies, whereas they look at these theories, look at different things at different circumstances, because they're all look from a different angle. So, for example, when we are talking about the behaviorist theory, they see learning as an experience through conditioning or reinforcing or repetition, which leads to a permanent change in behavior, whereas a cognitive focuses on the building on knowledge, for example, and making sure that how information is conveyed is an important aspect when we look at it. Constructive theories, however, they look at going beyond acquiring knowledge to consider how the learning is actively built through new information, constructive, i.e., in addition to the existing knowledge. So they are constructing things. If you look at the social situation or social and situational theories, they recognize factors in learning skills. They look at gaining knowledge. They look at learning can be based on shared experiences, whereas the transformative theory, they look at critical reflection, right, on experiences or political or societal structures. So all these theories have a different, different motivation, and they look up from different angle when they look at the leadership development. Okay, so they are looking at the knowledge, they are looking at the human development in a completely different angle, but they are building on each other. So the behavioral theories look at how they started. Is they started earlier on through the classical skills, or sorry, through classical theory. They led from Max Weber in the early 1900s through scientific management, and they went into a theory of behavior or administrative theory by Phil. So the earlier classical theories, they looked at these bureaucracy, they looked at scientific management, they looked at the process management theories. Then they developed into neoclassical theories, which looks at human relations approach, which looks at the Elton Mayo studies, for example, and behavioral scientific theories by Maslow and McGregor. So they introduced a human touch, okay, human situational, human relations. They introduced the human relations in that scientific theory and classical theory. Then this developed into the 1900s, earlier, into a modern management theory, where developed the operations or computer technology and the IT and the empowerment or contingency theory, total quality management, scientific approach, re-engineering. So these, over the years, these behavioral theories have developed from classical to neoclassical to modern systems theory and so on. Okay, so they have changed over the years. Then we need to, after they, you need to look at the theories have developed into some kind of socio-behavioral theories. These theories, they change. These theories can help understand why people act the way they act and why they behave the way they behave. So they focus mainly on individuals, interpersonal skills, and community, community focused. So therefore, they address these kind of ideas. So over the years, they have changed their goals, and they have changed their, angle. Then you look at the social exchange theory. We need to look at the social exchange theory. Was proposed by George Casper in 1958. Now, exchange theory is social exchange theory is based on give and take, on the form of relationship. You take some benefit and give me some benefit, or expecting to be making sure that there is a recipient or there is a receiver and there is a giver. The feelings and emotions ought to be reciprocated in some kind of sense. So the relationship can never be one-sided. It's got to be both-sided. In other words, these are the relationship where individuals receives less than he gives. So this social exchange theory is based on the give and take relationship. Okay, interpersonal relationship, it explains this model explains how individual looks or outlooks towards a relationship, and how one's perception changes in due course. When two people come together, they like each other and they enter into a relationship, and then they follow two directional components. They go a long way in creating an individual perception about relationship. So it's a two-sided relationship. It's two-sided relationship model, which looks at other to self and self to others. So okay, so this is a quite important development when we look at the awareness, or when we look at the individual as how he or she partners or they are treated by one another. Okay, now let's look at the leadership and management. What makes so having looked at these leadership theories, or how they've changed over the years, we want to know what's the difference, what makes a good leader and what makes a good manager. Okay, so what do you think could be making a good leader and good manager? For many, it's it is somebody who can inspire and get the most from their staff. A leadership, the difference between a good leader and a manager. A leader has many qualities. In order to be a good leader or a good manager, you should be able to think nicely, creatively, provide a vision for the company, solve problems, be calm under pressure, take pressure, right? Make some clear decisions, possess good quality communication skills, and make sure that you achieve things that you tried to achieve, possess good authority, possess good knowledge, make sure that you have a good relationship with other people, make sure that you are knowledgeable about the matters, okay? And making sure that you carry these qualities with you, because leaders, as they say, they are made, not born, or born, not made. But do you think do you have to be born to be a good leader, or you need to be taught to be a good leader? I don't know. It's you know, it's a combination of both, you know, personal characteristics and with the training. So a manager can become a leader due to his training, due to his personal characteristics, due to his experience and keep on learning process. So people do become, managers do become leaders in the long run. Some managers deal with the employees in a different way. Some are strict, some are soft, some are retain control, some don't retain control. Some are worker orientated, some are not worker orientated. It depends on the approach that you predominantly take. Okay, so right. So what we're saying is an organization is only as good as the person running it. So there is a quite a you know, we need to make sure that we understand the differences between managers and leaders. And of course, there's a handout on the Moodle which refers to this type of, you know, development or the theories of motivation and theories of development, and how the leadership has developed over the years from early 1900s to later on, you know, taking the scientific management and development of leadership style from scientific management to, you know, taking the human relations approach. So this chart will, you know, look, this chart clearly lays out the motivational approach from earlier in the 19th century to later on. So look at that. Okay. 1.2, having looked at that, 1.2 asks you to contrast the main approaches to study of leadership. Okay, so the contrast the main approaches, i.e. compare and contrast. So the leaders, you know, when we are talking about the leaders, when we're talking about the managers, when we're talking about the corporate leaders or society leaders, we can compare, we can look at the, you know, we can look at them and look at the differences between them throughout the world, how they compare to each other. So, for example, when we are comparing political leaders, right, they are tracked every year by the World Economic Forum, which looks at the risks, which looks at the how political leaders differ according to where they are, or according to the global risks report. So how do they deal with, for example, issues like weapons of mass destruction, for example? How do they deal with severe energy price shocks, for example? You know, what's their reaction when they are looking at the climate change? So the challenges of leadership is to turn these risks into different opportunities, and World Economic Forum looks and follows these leaders and compares and their decision-making processes. And these forums are very clear in the sense that they provide an understanding how leaders deal with these global perspectives according to their own style of leadership, according to their own traits, according to their own generations, according to their own globalization, you know, perspectives, or according to their own competencies. Okay, so you know, we can say that there are, you know, the contrasting approaches to how leaders take decisions. So let's look at these leadership theories. Let's look at them, general theories of leadership. Okay, one theory is, let's have a look. One theory is behavioral theory, or behavioral or style school theory. The other one's a great man or trait school theory. Then there's a situational or context school theory, contingencies theories, interactional or transactional and transformational leadership. So we looked at these in passing, but for example, if you look at the great man theory, they look at in leaders in the sense that they are people who understand, who have a particular traits, who have particular characteristics, who have a particular understanding of their accomplishments as leaders. This is, what the great man or traits school describes. Okay, whereas behavioral or styles school theory describes leadership in terms of people-oriented, or suggests that different combinations of these theories produce different styles of leadership. Situational or context leadership school looks at leadership in the sense that the people or leaders, they are task oriented, they are task motivated, they are more authoritative and more participative. And contingency or interactionist school thinks that the leaders, they influence various factors. They look at things in term which determines proper or appropriate leadership. So they are situational, in other words. So these some of general theories of leadership, and you are required to research more. And there are references. You can look at the Kurt Lewin and Fieldler or Bass or Stodd-Gill, and so you can in the reading list, you can look up at these and go into these theories and research them a little bit more. Okay. Now, what are the factors associated with the leadership styles? As we said, primary factor is the capacity, achievement, responsibility, participation, status, situation. Different leadership traits go with everything. Okay, which leadership traits matter most? It depends on the circumstances, on the circumstances, and on the different other factors. So there is no clear-cut, leadership trait. There is no leadership trait which matters most. So, for example, if you are looking at a capacity, as a primary factor of leadership, then it's associated with, originality or judgment or intelligence or alertness or verbal facility. If you're looking at, another leadership trait which matters most, then of course, honesty is, matters most when we look at leader, because 84%, for example, 84% people said that leadership should be honest. They should be, true. There should be truthfulness. So, for example, you can trust them, and they'll. So, a lot of people, or the highest number of people said this: honesty matters as a trait. Okay, whereas the ambitious, if you look at the ambitious trait, and only 53% of people said the leadership traits matters as far as the ambition concerns. So there are different, different trait styles and skills, knowledge of global leaders. Okay, so there is no one, style, one characteristic that distinguishes to the other. If you look at global study, if you look at this particular study, which studies global leadership behavior, there are 6 types of leadership behavior that distinguish leaders between, that describes leadership. So, for example, a leader should be charismatic, a leader should be team-oriented, a leader should be participative, he should be autonomous, he should be self-protective, he should be, humane. And so this globe, particular research studies different characteristics of leaders. So you are welcome to look at this, and this describes the behaviors that leadership should possess. It describes how they are. Okay, going further, you need to look at the transformational and transactional leadership. When we are looking at the transactional and transformational leadership, we see that the transactional leadership style is always, this is a style that is always willing to give you something in return for following them. They are the people who want, who you want to follow, transactional, and they are number of, people who follow these leadership style because they, get new responsibilities, they get to know new promotion, for example, or they desire change in duties. The problem with this type of leadership is that it is, only motivation. It only the problem with this is that the leader or the transaction leadership is expectations. They expect too much, and if they get something wrong, then there is nothing left how to make a good deal, how to make it correct. Okay, and this type of leadership, this type of transactional leadership do display good behavior or charismatic behavior, and they can be quite effective in different circumstances to create motivated players. However, they need to be able to adapt in dealing, in making sure that they benefit an organization. So, transactional leader is, depends on, on the circumstances, and it's very important that they can, be a good performance. They can be a good reviewer sometimes, depending on this, circumstances. If you compare this leadership, transactional leadership to transformational leadership, now transformational leadership are, very valuable. They are very good leaders in the terms of leadership style, because they want to give a chance to change. They are there in the process of changing others. They are there to transforming others, developing themselves as contributors. They want to make sure that the outcomes, their best outcomes. They want to achieve the best outcomes for themselves. They want to transform the thing. They want to transform the circumstances in the sense that they are going through changing responses to their leadership challenges, and they want to make sure that they are not content with simply using force, right? Force of personality. They're not really content to simply use force of personality or bargaining, but they want to make sure that they use knowledge. They want to make sure that they use their expertise. They want to make sure that they change. They want to make sure that they try and change the vision of the organization so that people will follow them, and so that the people will remain with them, right? So this is why they are there in the process of transforming others, making sure that they lead people and they represent people in order to sustain and self-replicate leadership for a longer term. So their commitment, their they are very committed. They are there to change things. They are there to solve problems. And in a fast-paced environment, they are probably the most suitable leadership style. Okay. Now then, there is a team-oriented leadership style, or there is a team-oriented leadership, which looks at which looks at leadership, which emphasizes the effective, how to build an effective team, how to implement a common purpose, how to implement a common goal amongst the team members. And these leadership people, these people who lead teams, they, collaborate. They are team player. They are very diplomatic. They are, very administratively competent. They are what you call them reverse scored. They are very important at recognizing behavioral aspects of leadership. They are very good motivators. They suggest that leaders' behavior, within these leadership styles, comes together as an ideal, team leadership style. So they are very much oriented into drawing on, leadership style that is suited to the requirements of the team, right? They want to make sure that their team succeeds, and they carry team-oriented leadership, making sure that the team, is carried all the way through. Okay, so this is a very effective team. The leadership style is very effective when the teams are built. Okay, when they are focusing on the coining the team orientation. Okay. Next thing is we need to look at the distributed leadership. Now, this leadership school, or this type of leadership, looks at leadership in a sense that it's a distributed leadership. It looks at the challenge model. It looks at the individual. It looks at the individual leader in the sense that they need challenge. They need a good challenge. They challenge in the sense that seeks to challenge, focused mainly on traits. It looks at the challenge of situational analysis, style, and transformational leadership style. Okay, it argues this type of leadership argues that there is a concept of leadership which influences and looks at leaders as influencers and power hungry, and multiple leaders are distributed throughout the organization. There are different arguments for this type of distributed leadership. Okay, this leadership style is very it looks at the leadership style in the sense that it's a traditional hierarchical view of power and hierarchical view of influence, because throughout organization there are different multiple levels of leadership that exist. So it's very systematic. It's very collective. People think that this is a very challenging model that is focused on individual leadership. Okay. Now, if you compare that to the participative leadership, now participative leadership is where managers involve other employees, for example, in decision making and implementing those decisions. But these are like a consultative. You consult with others, and you take help from others. You ask their contribution. You ask, other people to recognize your in diversity, inclusivity. You make sure that the teams are working together. You make sure that the leadership is there to make sure that they are supported by practitioner research, making sure that this type of leadership is very much what you call them, supported in business situations. Okay, it's practitioner-led, in other words, research. A lot of people found out, or a lot of people who are practitioner research oriented, like Deloitte, Australia, and the Victorian Equal Opportunities and Human Rights Commission, they found that the inclusive teams, they outperform their peers by 80%, i.e., because when they compare with other teams, these participative leadership, these participative inclusive teams, they do better in particular circumstances, because there's a lot of diverse people in it. There are different people contributing to the goals of the organization. They are ethnically different. They are different brains. They are different skills. They have different knowledge. They have different input. So they perform output very much different output. They are outperforming. Human oriented leadership, humane or human oriented leadership reflects another style of management or other style of leadership. This includes what you call them leadership in the sense that people are humane, that people are modest, which means that the human or humane leadership, they are there as good as ethical leaders, on the sense that in the sense that they act morally good, they behave ethically good. So this type of leadership style is emerged as a distinct academic area of applied ethics in the 1990s, okay, but has been debated for thousands of years. So this is focuses on the ethical issues, ethical leadership, and it's very another style of leadership. And people of this type of leadership, they argue there are three moral facets to the ethics of leaders. Number one, the ethics of leaders themselves. Number two, the ethics of how a leader leads, and the third one, the ethics of what a leader does. Okay, so humane oriented leadership focuses on the ethics, okay, the morality, the behavior, the leader, how he leads, and how he motivates. Okay, another leadership style is situational leadership style, okay, or situational leadership theory that has been created by Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard, which looks at the behavior of leaders, whereas this leadership style looks at team members, weighs their variables in the workplace, and chooses the leadership style that suits best to suit goals and needs and circumstances of the organization. It's a situation. It depends on what situation, what circumstances, and people behave differently into different circumstances. Okay, sometimes they can be instructing, sometimes the leaders can be participating, sometimes these leadership can be delegating. So it depends on their circumstances and the tasks. Okay, so you can look at that. Likert, of course, let's look at Likert. Now, he developed the 4 system of typology of leadership style, and he exploited these leadership into authoritarian, consultative, benevolent, authoritative, and participative leadership. Then you can look at the leadership style matrix in the sense that these 4 type of leadership styles have evolved into a different type of leadership style later, which are termed consultative, participative, benevolent, autocratic. They have been built upon, the style, leadership style we've earlier looked at. Okay, so you can study, look at that and make sure that you know the terms of these. Okay, now having looked at all these theories and leadership models and so on, we now come on to the AC 1.3, which is to look at the evaluating the role of leadership in strategic management. Now, how can we evaluate the leadership and their role? We need to look at we need to look at the leadership in terms of their role. For example, are they figurehead, or in terms of their leadership style or liaison. For example, Mintzberg, for example, he looked at leadership. He's published in his 10 management roles in his book. He comes up with these 10 roles as a leader as a figurehead, leader as a leader as a liaison person, or monitors or disseminator, and so forth. Okay, so you can look at that. You can compare this role of leadership in terms of various leadership roles. Okay, Mintzberg, on the other hand, he looks at the 10 skills of the manager in rather than 10 roles of leader, and he thinks that figurehead manager can be a figurehead or leader and liaise with other people and information and monitor. So he looks at the interpersonal skills, and he comes up with different types of skills for managers when they need to develop, as leader and as managers. So, this is there is a handout, and you can look at that on okay. So what we've looked at so far, I mean, we've dealt a lot of stuff. We have a lot of leadership, and we studied management, the difference between leadership and managers. We looked at a lot of theories. We looked at a lot of theories of managers and management and leadership styles, and we compared the leader and the managers themselves. So towards the end, we looked at what is a leader, what type of roles a leader or a manager has, and you looked at the Mintzberg and the skills of the manager, and you compare, or you can look at them when you have the time. As far as the resources are concerned, you can there are a lot of resources. There's a lot of books that you can read in your Moodle platform. You have a recommended reading list. Specifically, there's a good book of Johnson's called Whereas Explores Corporate Strategy. There's a lot of ebooks. There's a quiz on there you can look up. There's books regarding international business. There's a book by Daniel, Reid, Boff, and Sullivan, which looks at the international business relationships and so on. There's other books that you can explore, and make sure that you come up, make sure that you are familiar with some of these theories for your assignment. Okay. If you have any questions, please put me through. Please send me if you can. Otherwise, if you're okay, then we will see you next in the next lesson, and hopefully we will look at LO2. Okay. If you've got no questions, thank you very much for joining, and I hope you have a good evening. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.